Via open meeting, please.
What is this person doing? They're going 40 miles an hour. No.
You have open mic, Matt. Is there?
It's a good thing I didn't say what I was thinking.
Supervisor Unger, would you sign in, please, for your open meetings? Anybody else? Supervisor Opal? He's not here. Never mind. Disregard. All right, being 7 o'clock, I'll call the Marathon County Board of Supervisors to order, please. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing. Following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will have the reading of the notice, please.
An educational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors will be held at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, at 7 p.m. on June 16th, 2022, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. And I would like to request everyone in attendance, please put your cell phones on silent or vibrate and any other electronic devices not to be an interruption to the meeting, and I appreciate and thank you for your compliance. And we will go to roll call. Roll call has been taken by open meetings, and we have everyone signed in. And I would like to move to item number 6, which is a welcoming of the visitors that we have with us today. Not only the visitors that we have in person, but I also like to welcome the viewing audience who has also joined us, and those individuals who have joined us via WebEx. So with that being said, we will move on to public comment of 15 minutes for anyone wishing to address the board. And no one has approached the chair, and no one has approached the clerk to address the board in public comment. So we will move on to item number 8, and that's education presentations and/or reports. Department head role reports on roles and responsibilities. We are starting out, we're going to have effectively, when it is all done, we'll have every department head give a brief report to this board as far as their role and responsibility. You will get a more in-depth if you happen to serve on that committee from those department heads. And tonight we're having 3 department heads present. They fall under the HR Finance Committee's jurisdiction. And we're going to start with the Register of Deeds. And so we have with us this evening Jenny Lemmer, who is going to present on the roles and responsibilities of the Register of Deeds to the board. So Jenny, please.
Thank you. The Register of Deeds Office is responsible for recording land record transactions and federal tax liens, military discharge papers, registering marriages and deaths with the state, producing copies of birth, death, marriage, and divorce certificates. We also have the public come in and do genealogy searching and land record searching. We receive documents by walk-ins, electronically, and by mail. Our recording turnaround time is a day or less, and documents are returned within 1 week from when it's recorded. We are currently exploring the possibilities of returning documents via email, and that would reduce the county's expense for postage, envelopes, labels, and of course, staff in our office and the county clerk's office. Some important facts or successes of our office in the last several years would be staffing. In 2015, we had 7 full-time people and 1 part-time. Now we have 5 full-time. In 2018, we switched our software package to LandLink, which allows us to be more efficient. And part of that package is Landshark, which is a third-party vendor, allows the public to purchase copies online. Money generated by Landshark is 100% county revenue. And to give you an example of that, in 2018, we collected $14,711, and last year we collected $37,222. In 2019, we added another e-recording vendor to the system, so now we have 2 e-recorders, which would be Simplifile and CSC. In 2021 and 2022, we were given the opportunity to have staff working from home. We also worked with Patty from City County IT to create an automated vital record application, which allows the public and social services to complete applications online. We also started recording the DD-214, which is the military discharge documents electronically. With our office remodel, we have 3 public access computers in the lobby, which is used for property searching and for vital records for the applications for the death, birth, marriage, and divorce to be completed. We also have 1 public access computer in the office for genealogy searching. We do work closely with other county departments, and the 2 departments here at the courthouse would be the treasurer's office, which last year I got to help them receipt property tax payments. We provide them with death record abstracts, and previously we helped searching out delinquent properties. We also work with the county clerk's office regarding the marriage licenses and certificates. Does anyone have questions at all?
So any questions for Jennifer on her office and her responsibilities?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have with us the treasurer, Connie Beiersdorf. Connie, please.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Connie Beiersdorf, the Marathon County Treasurer. In my office, what we do is we receive all deposits and investments for the county. We collect all postponed and delinquent real estate taxes. We distribute the said taxes to the schools and all 61 municipalities on their settlements. We handle applications for tax deed and take properties for unpaid taxes. We oversee the property description functions, including the assessment rolls, which we are currently working on right now. We create real estate and personal property tax bills that you receive in December. I train and work with municipal clerk and treasurers in preparing tax rates and submitting tax forms to the Department of Revenue. We work closely with the Finance Department and Register Deeds Office and Clerk's Office when we are filing for the tax deed process. We provide consistent communication to all departments within Marathon County on a daily basis with any of their questions and concerns. Currently, some of the things that highlight in our office is we are working with the residents to understand their tax process. We assist homeowners with payment agreements if they are eligible to pay their taxes. Currently, we're working with organizations such as the Wisconsin Help for Homeowners, which is assisting and helping the residents pay for their 2019, 20, and 21 taxes if they are eligible due to COVID concerns. I visit the municipalities at their board meetings to discuss any questions that they may have and to meet the new and continuing elected officials. I also meet with homeowners to discuss options to pay their taxes and how they can avoid their tax situations. Currently, I am cleaning up the delinquent tax parcels within Marathon County, which includes the tax deed process and issuing any warrants if need be. I work with homeowners to review their property questions and concerns, which deals with the property listing part of it. I also attend the Towns Association meetings and update municipalities on any changes or concerns regarding properties and taxes or any upcoming reports that they need to file with me or with the DOR. I work very close with the assessors with open book and board of review process. And I'm also a member of the Wisconsin County Treasurers Association, which we just had our conference last week, and we learned a lot. And one of the biggest issues we have is the Act 216 for homeowners, and also working with the tax deed process. So other counties are doing the same. So in my office, there is the county treasurer, there's a deputy treasurer, there is an administrative assistant, all full-time. We have a full-time property lister, and we also have a full-time lister who is about 60% listing. She does 30% tax deed, and she works in corp counsel for the 10% of the time. So she is actually housed in corp counsel. So this is one of our newest positions. And we also hired a new GIS mapper who is currently working in the CPZ department. Does anybody have any questions?
Anybody have questions for the treasurer? So the treasurer is responsible for your property tax slips when they come out in the fall, in December, so you get to call her and complain about it when it's too high. No, I'm sorry. Any questions for the treasurer? Supervisor Marash.
I'm just curious, since you brought it up, what is Act 216 for homeowners?
The Act 216 is something that was just passed in April, and that's when we take the property that we will, depending on the sale of the property, we may owe the former owner part of the sale. So there's a lot of questions going on about that and how the process works, so it's still in the works. So that's anything that we take as a tax deed as of April 1st of 2022.
So really what happened in the past, if the property was a homestead property, the homeowner, the previous homeowner, prior to the county taking it, could request, if there was any proceeds in excess of the debt they owed the county, the homeowner could request that the county pay those funds to them for homeowner property. Act 216 says disregard whether it's a homeowner property or a homestead property, any property that the county takes under tax levy. And when they dispose of that property, if the disposition of the value that the county receives when it sells it is greater than the debt owed the county, the individual property owner has a right to claim that, and has a right to claim that up to, 5 years?
5 years.
I think it's 5 years. They have the right to claim it for 5 years. So it creates a situation where the county may have to put those funds into trust until 5 years from now, because it's on the homeowner to request those funds. Under the previous, the homeowner had 60 days to request those excess funds, but now they have up to 5 years. So there's a lot of challenges. WCA, and there's probably going to be a lot of litigation potentially on that Act 216, but it's yet to be seen. Any other questions for the treasurer? Okay, thank you, Connie.
Thank you.
So next we have the county clerk, and the county clerk also is another one of the elected officials that falls under the oversight of the HR Finance Committee. So the clerk, Kim, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. I feel like you have heard me speak about this a few times already, especially if you're on HR Finance, you've heard my spiel. But for those of you who are not and who didn't hear everything in orientation, probably what you primarily think of when you think of the county clerk is you think of county board and you think of elections. We are the statutory administration office for all elections that take place in the county. We just finished the spring elections in April, and we had our first ever county board election recount that we did following that election. And we discovered during that recount that the results were exactly what the machines on election night had said they were. So that was reassuring for everyone. We are full in swing for the fall elections. And you think, what? It's June. Well, we have a primary August 9th, So the ballots were sent to the printer last Friday for that primary. And working with our vendor for elections, he said this is probably the lengthiest, most full ballot that he has ever seen in Wisconsin, because there are so many candidates on both sides of the aisle for various offices. So when people go to vote in August, they will certainly have their choices that they can make. There's no shortage of candidates for this election. So the municipal clerks will be picking up those ballots next week so that they can get the absentee ballots sent out to those who have requests on file, or as people request an absentee ballot between now and the election, they'll be able to get those sent to them. Another thing we do in our office is we issue marriage license. That is another statutory responsibility that we have. Everyone who gets married in Marathon County gets to come see us. And we had a surprise inspection in our office last week for marriage inspections when Supervisor Vacancy showed up and wanted us to give him one. So if you have any questions about how that process works, he'll fill you in on that. Another thing we do after the budget is done in the fall, we issue the apportionment of the taxes to all the municipalities. We work with the treasurer's office on tax deed properties. After the treasurer's office takes those properties, we work with an appraiser and we work to dispose of those properties. And we have done quite a few of those last year, and we are looking forward to doing more in the future. We are the main records keeper for the county. So we keep track of all the contracts that the county enters into, any other agreements, memorandums of understanding with other municipalities or other counties. We are the record keeper for those. Our office also serves as the clerk to the county board, as you all know. So that's why you hear from me so much, because that's part of my statutory responsibility. We have some non-statutory things that we do in our office. We issue passports, which is a huge revenue generator for our office. Everyone who comes in to get a passport pays a fee to the U.S. Department of State, and then they also pay a fee to our office. So that is money in the treasury every time we issue a passport. So if you know of people who are getting ready to travel, send them our way. We have the mailroom for all county departments in our office. We get the mail every day from the U.S. Postal Service. We distribute it to all the departments, and then we process all the outgoing mail for all the county departments as well. Just recently, we became clerk to all of the standing committees except for the Environmental Resources Committee. Nothing against Supervisor Long and Han's committee, but that is a very technical committee, and they have the expertise over in CPZ to handle that, so we thought we'd let them keep that. We also kind of tend to be the information desk for people who come into the courthouse. My office is right here across the hall from the assembly room. So as folks come into the courthouse, especially if they're not familiar, if they're not a frequent flyer and know where they need to go, they'll often stop in our office and say, hey, where do I need to go for a court? Where do I need to go to get a copy of my marriage certificate? Where do I need to go to pay my property taxes? So one thing that we like to stress is providing excellent customer service to everyone who walks in our door, whether they are our customer or whether we are just directing them where to go. We have myself in the office, plus we have 3 other staff. I have an assistant. Her name is Kelly Bloom. And then I have 2 other staff, Nicole Hodek, who is here tonight, and she will be the recording secretary, working to take minutes, and she is also available to help you with anything that you need. And then David Holcomb, he's our mailroom clerk and all-around helper at the counter as well. So anything that you ever need from us, please don't hesitate to call, and we are more than happy to direct you where you need to go if we don't provide that answer for you. Thank you.
Any questions for the clerk? Okay, we will move on. Next, we have with us a director of the Social Services Department, Vicki Tilka, and Vicki has some great information to share with the board on a grant that she solicited with the state on some, and I will not steal any more of her thunder. I will let her provide that information.
Thank you very much. Is this showing on the, okay.
Chairman, I don't believe the microphone at the podium is working
It
correctly.
is on, it is on, it's just that individuals have to be close enough for the mic to pick it up.
How's this? Is this okay?
And bend it down a little bit, maybe.
Okay, thank you. I'm Vicki Tilka. I'm the Director of Social Services. I've been with the county for 35 years, and I've been the director for 17 years already, and I haven't been so excited about a project for a really long time. So I'm very excited to be able to be here tonight and tell you about this. So the project that we're part of is called Family Keys, and it's a housing collaborative for child welfare, and it's a demonstration project. Am I moving it forward myself here?
Might have.
Or this one?
If it's not that, it's
That's
just the arrow
easier.
key, I think.
All
There you
right,
go.
perfect. So let me just give you a little bit of background of what this grant is attached to. So there's a federal law that has been passed several years ago that's called Family First Prevention Services Act. And that act, again, a federal act, has been put into place to be able to have states serve children in child welfare, but keep more children in their own homes rather than have them be in out-of-home care, because the federal government has basically said it's better for children to live with their families. So even when we encounter situations where children may be unsafe, where there has been abuse or neglect that has occurred, by law, we're required to try to serve families intact and keep them together. That is not new law. What is new is now there's a financial incentive that goes with child welfare agencies practicing in such a way. So there'll be less money forwarded to states for child welfare for out-of-home placements, which is basically how funding occurs right now for out-of-home placements. And instead, that money is going to be redirected, not all of it, but some of it's going to be redirected to earlier intervention and prevention and keeping kids with their families. So every state, every child welfare agency has a financial incentive to be able to comply with this law and keep families together. Certainly, we'll never leave a child in a home if they're unsafe, but we need to increase our services and different things, resources that we have available to support children in their families, even when there's an element of safety that has to be addressed. So in order to accomplish this is going to be a multi-year systems change. There have been a number of long-term projects that our Department of Children and Families in Madison, they oversee the work that we do as a child welfare agency. They've done a number of long-term projects that will be long-term projects and really comprehensive changes, as well as some one-time things. And I'm going to talk to you tonight about a one-time project that we're part of as Marathon County Department of Social Services with the Department of Children and Families in order to accomplish what we need to do. So basically, the Department of Children and Families has done a lot of research about what is it going to take to try to keep more kids with their families. And from their research, they learned that about 10% of children are removed from their homes due to unsafe or inadequate housing when there's no other viable option. This doesn't necessarily mean that there's something physically safe in the house with like a wall falling down or mold or something like that, although that could be an element. But in many cases, and particularly in Marathon County, we see this often, where children are unsafe because parents are either using drugs themselves in a way that is unsafe to their children, or they may be living in a house where others are using drugs and have a criminal background that would be unsafe for young children to be in. So sometimes they don't have another alternative to move to a different place with their children, even if the parents themselves were able to address their safety issues. They still need a place to live with their children. So this whole project, our vision of success with this project is that we'll have enough adequate and safe housing for all families so that lack of housing is never a barrier to parents being able to take care of their children. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish. So the goals of Family Keys, first of all, this is a slide from the Department of Children and Families. They want this to be extremely collaborative and participatory with the counties. We are one of 3 counties joining La Crosse and Wood County in this endeavor. And they want it to be county-led and co-designed between the counties with the Department of Children and Families, and then some partners that they have at the table. Casey Family Foundation, which is a funder and provides technical assistance as well. They work with all states around the country and help to move forward innovative designs and ways to be able to address child welfare to get better outcomes. So we're thrilled that they're at the table with us as well. It's a very flexible program, which you're going to see when I talk about the grant, how quickly this all came together. And we're going to learn from it. That's really the piece. There'll be some things that we'll share together as counties as we move forward in our meetings together, and there'll be some things that we'll do differently based on our local differences. So really, we're talking about that intersection of child welfare and housing. So what I really need everyone to know is this grant is only going to be available for those child welfare families that we serve at the Department of Social Services, meaning that they need to be open to us for services because we found that there's been a concern for safety. Otherwise, other families are not eligible for this because it is a demonstration project to show that we can make that difference for those child welfare families. Again, as I said, we learned that housing can be that key barrier, and so we want to show what could work and what might not work. And they're really happy that the Department of Children and Families is open to that, because when we really do learn from a demonstration project, we learn what may work, but also what may not work, what may work in one jurisdiction and may not work in another one. So these are our partners that we mentioned, the county teams, Department of Children and Families. Root is a contracted agency that the Department of Children and Families has a contract with to help actually co-design the project, and they'll be responsible for a lot of public awareness communication that will occur. And at the end of this project, the goal is to find out what works and try to replicate that across the state. And so they will be really instrumental in helping to design what that would look like as well. So Family Keys itself, it's a project, and it is a long-term demonstration project. We're not actually sure how many years we're going to be doing this, but we know it's going to be at least 2 years because we have a 2-year grant. As I already mentioned, we're going to be moving forward and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So the really exciting thing that occurred, we've only been involved with this project for about 6 weeks, I think. It hasn't been very long. And in one of the meetings, we were offered the opportunity to write a brief grant proposal on what would it take to house families immediately. So we have some child welfare families that we currently are working with that are under a court order that have done everything that they need to do to get their children back. They followed all of the requirements that they had to do, but yet we can't return their children to them because they don't have a safe place to live. We don't have affordable housing in Marathon County, in Wausau in particular, and so it's very much a barrier for families to be able to find a safe place to live. And in our department, we have access to some funds, some other grant funds, that we can pay for short-term housing for families. But even with that, we have to be reasonable about what we can pay and for how many months, because again, they wouldn't be able to afford a $1,500 apartment after we pay for a couple of months. So we have to really pay attention to that. One of our supervisors shared with the group a situation where a mother is really waiting just to have her children reunited with her. She found an apartment, we helped her to do the application, all that type of thing. And by the time she went across town to give the first check to the landlord, he said he rented it to someone else who had a better rental history. And that is the barrier that we see in child welfare, because our clients tend to come with a poor rental history. They may have a criminal history, and landlords can rent to other people, and they, in general, will tend to do that where they can have more stable housing. A number of our clients have quite an eviction history as well. So those are all barriers, in addition to the fact we don't have a lot of affordable housing. So what we wrote for in our grant was to have transitional housing for our child welfare families. As I said, we have some families that could have their children back right now if they only had a place to live. So we knew that we wouldn't be able to rent affordable apartments because we don't have a lot of affordable apartments at this particular point. So we found a location that has a number of bedrooms, a lot of bedrooms, and then it would have a congregate living room, congregate kitchen, and has a lot of bathrooms, and has been used for transitional housing in the past. And so it was ideal to us to have this set up because we can have families live together. They can, we certainly can provide education to them together. We can provide case management together. They could help each other by providing childcare for each other when they need to to apply for a job, for example. So we think this situation will be ideal for short term. And then we would work with a case manager that was part of the grant to ask for a position. It's not likely going to be a full-time county position, but either a limited term position or contract with an agency for a case manager who would then work with those families. Because it's really important to say, okay, now you have a safe place to live. You don't have to worry about that anymore, right? You don't have to worry about having a roof over your heads. You can now focus on what you need to do to keep your children safe. But the next step would be, what do you need to get housing on a long-term basis? And so there's lots of things. That's part of why this is called Family Keys. It's not just the key to your house, right, or key to an apartment, but it's also what's the key to helping that family to find more permanence and a living setting that will be more long-term. So this case manager will get to the root cause for each family and will help them connect to services. So our grant we received is significant, $327,000, 100, for a 2-year grant that'll pay for the rent, the utility, the furnishings, and again, that case management position as well. So really excited about that. We have a property that we are in process of, as I said, finalizing a rent, a contract with, a lease with the landlord. It is in Wausau on the bus line. So the location is ideal for us as well. What we anticipate is that families will gain experience in what it means to be a successful tenant, follow the guidelines that are in place. They won't pay for rent. That's our vision at this point. They won't pay for rent because of the grant is able to pay for that. So instead, whatever funds they have available, and obviously we would help them to get a job if they don't already have one, will be put away for their next step in their housing, whatever that is. And that would be part of their demonstration. There'll be some set agreements that they'll need to agree to, and our department will select which families will live there so that there'll be good matches with each other. We anticipate about 3 families can live there at a time. And again, the whole point would be that this would help us to save out-of-home care days so we can return children to their families when they were out of home, or eventually we'll get to the point where as we may be meeting families when we're doing an investigation for child abuse or neglect. If the barrier for the family is that they don't have safe housing and otherwise we would have to remove those children, we would look at offering this place for them to live as well on a short-term basis. So as I said, this was a really quick turnaround, and the money is available to us in July. So right around the corner. So these are the people that the Department of Children, or the types of roles the Department of Children and Families has suggested that we have on our Family Keys team. So our department leadership acts as a project sponsor, and the project manager is our child welfare manager. So we're really the ones kind of overseeing the whole thing, signing off on decisions, that type of thing. We have a person from the Department of Children and Families that's assigned to us in particular. And then they really want us to capitalize on lived experience. So people who have been in the child welfare system, who have been successful, and they have maintained their residence with their child, and ideally would be somebody who struggled with housing, but was able to combat that and learned from that. And we're looking, our ideal would be if a person with that type of background also had the skills to be that case management position, that would be ideal for us. So that's our concept at this point. Child welfare expert is obviously handled within our department. I'm going to show you our team names in just a second. Our housing experts, we have housing experts from North Central CAP and from United Way as well. Our health expert, we have from the health department, and local champion, who is going to be the person who's going to help us make connections within the community as well. Here's our team. Brian Gubness from BA and Esther Greenheck Foundation, Ben Lee from United Way, Laura Scuderi from the Health Department, Diane Senholz from North Central CAP. Here's our staff from social services that are involved. And already in this little bit of time that we've been talking about it, we have gotten verbal and actually in-person commitment to work with us from the local landlord that we're talking about, St. Vincent de Paul, the Wausau Police Department, the City of Wausau, specifically with the mayor, and more to come, because people are very excited about this project. Housing is an issue for lots of people in Marathon County, and we have some great programs that assist adults with housing. We don't have enough. I don't think anybody would say we have enough. What we really lack, though, is housing that can be available to families. So I just put this quote in because this is where our partners are really coalescing around this project. There's no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Thank you.
So with that, I'll open it up for questions. Is there any questions from the board? Supervisor Shafinsky.
You mentioned a number of times you referenced back to affordable housing. What is the definition? What's the monetary dollar amount that you referred to as affordable versus not affordable?
In general, about $500 a month for like a small one-bedroom apartment. We don't have any like that in Wausau anymore. And United Way has actually done a great job of with partners of tracking and just doing a count on, again, what we're considered affordable housing. And there aren't any in that range. There are some that may be available closer to $1,000, but a lot of the newer places that are being built are in excess of that. And one of the dynamics that we learned about in our conversation so far is that there have been some local landlords in Marathon County who have sold their properties to larger corporations across the country that have come in to, again, redesign those or develop those apartments into something else. And that's been one of the dynamics about why we have less affordable housing.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we have Supervisor Wilhelm.
With the money being cut out to pull kids out of homes where it could be dangerous, where I live, a child who actually passed away, I think it was last year or year before, from neglect. And are there going to be more kids falling through the cracks that may be in dangerous situations because there's no funding for it?
No, and this isn't an issue about not having adequate funding to be able to place kids in out-of-home care. We'll always do what we need to do to be able to do that. And at the end of the day, the county is responsible to at least share in those costs along with the Department of Children and Families and the federal government. It's really a kind of a three-way way of paying for that. So we would never not have a child go into out-of-home care placement because of money. What we're seeing is that with flexible services, supportive services, different resources for families, is that we can address safety in the home many times without having the traumatic removal. It's very traumatic for children to be placed outside of their family home. And so if we can avoid that and work with the family together intact, we want to do that. I believe at some point, County Administrator Leonard has asked that I would come and do a more in-depth presentation on Family First Prevention Services Act, so the board would really understand those components at a greater detail. But one of the major points of that is if a child is unsafe to be remaining at home, they will not remain at home. It doesn't have anything to do with money at that point.
Okay, Supervisor Dickinson is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm confused with what you describe as unsafe and inadequate situations when it comes to housing. So you say, unsafe. You backed away that it's the child's welfare, their health, or their right. So you weren't talking about that, but you talked about the situation where they're unsafe in their housing environment. What does that mean?
Well, they could be unsafe for a number of reasons, which would also include their housing environment. So an example would be in Marathon County, unfortunately, we still have a considerable challenge with people using drugs and being addicted to drugs, right? Drugs and alcohol for that matter. But so if we have parents who are actively using, and especially having really young children, and perhaps they are living in a setting where there's drug paraphernalia around that is dangerous to little children, crawling on the ground, that type of thing, that would be a typical situation where we would say that environment is unsafe for that child to be in. And depending on where the parents are in their use of drugs or their commitment to recovery, they may or may not be willing or able to change that environment. And so that would make the child unsafe if they were in such a situation. It's one example.
So as a follow-up, how does changing their location of where they're living address that situation? I mean, the person's doing drugs, the parent's doing drugs, correct?
Correct.
I assume that the child is not taken away from the parents in that situation.
If a parent is, in general, again, if a parent's drug use is so unstable so that it's impacting their ability to safely parent their child, that's really the difference. People can use drugs, and they can technically do it in such a way that it might not impede upon their ability to parent their child. So we're talking about when there's really a serious issue. If in a situation, what would likely occur is if we had one parent, for example, that was determined to be unsafe to a child. It could be because they're using drugs, or it could be because they've abused or neglected that child. And then we have another parent who is seen as being protective, meaning that that parent doesn't have those same challenges, but that parent doesn't have a place to go with the child. So potentially then we could have the parent that our language calls it a protective parent, that we could have that protective parent go with the child to this residence rather than having the child be removed from both parents.
Thank you.
Supervisor Marshall.
I believe that you had said that really you were going to help 3 families and pay their entire rent for a period of time. If they have jobs, why not ask those families to contribute so that you could help more than 3 families?
Well, it's really a space issue about the 3 families in terms of how many bedrooms there are, and it will depend on how many children each family has. It potentially could be up to 4, depending on how many children each family would have, or if we have 2 parents or 1 parent. So there's a numbers thing just in terms of capacity, so that's part of it. Our team at this point has discussed asking people to pay a nominal amount of rent, kind of like as a buy-in, or instead having them save their money towards a future residence. And at this point, the team is saying what they know about the people that they work with in these types of programs, that they think that the better plan is for them to save their money. And again, we would be verifying that they're actually saving it, to be able to establish that they will have the foundation to be able to rent something when their plan with us is over.
We have Supervisor Baker next.
Thank you. In your slide, you say that 10% of children are removed from their homes due to unsafe and inadequate housing. According to the census, we have about 31,000 children in Marathon County. So I'm assuming that we don't remove 3,000 children from our homes, since there's 287 total children that are in out-of-home situations. So is that 10% of the 287? How many children are we actually talking about that are in this situation?
So this is a statewide number, first of all. So it would be 10% of children who were removed from their home were removed because of inadequate housing. So it's not 10% of the population. It's 10% of the children that were removed from their home.
And what would be your estimate? How many does that come out to?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't come with numbers of total out-of-home care kids.
Well, that's 287 according to the 2022 budget report. That's 287. So are we talking 28 children approximately?
I really don't have the number in Marathon County. I'm sorry, I didn't come prepared with numbers, so I can't comment. I'm not sure Marathon County's number would be exactly at 10%. That's a statewide average.
Okay.
The other thing that's complicated is when social workers record on the database. The reason for removal, many times they are able to record multiple reasons. And so the data itself is, it's helpful in knowing that 10% also check this box, right, for inadequate housing, but it could have been for other reasons as well.
Okay, any other questions? We have Supervisor Marash.
Thank you. For the families that are eligible to participate in this transitional housing program, will there be any kind of drug screening for the parents?
It could be. It depends on their case plan. So if that was part of their case plan to continue that, they wouldn't be eligible to live in that setting if they haven't already followed up on the conditions. So if that was a challenge for them, and they would have already gone through the different counseling and likely had those drug screens on an ongoing basis in order for us to determine that it was safe to return their children. So depending on the situation, that could be something that could continue for a period of time. And again, it would be case specific. We stay involved with families after we return children for up to a year with the court order. So we have that length of time to work with the family before they would have a plan where hopefully they would be on their own, building natural supports and other types of things as well. I didn't mention that.
Supervisor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So these families that are housed there, you have 3 or 4 families. Are these families separated by locked areas in this building? Are they all in the same house, just in different rooms? You know, and how are they protected against each other, given their family situations that could be unsafe?
Yep, they each will have their own bedroom area that will have a lock. That will be their lock. And then the congregate areas, again, are the living rooms and the kitchens. We also will have staff be coming in to be doing some checking and monitoring and support, as well as our partners and other resource people that would come in, say, for example, to do some parenting education if that was needed, that type of thing. But at the end of the day, they each have their own separate area that is locked.
And just as a follow-up on that, damage to the house?
We wrote that in as part of our grant, that we have a remediation fund to be able to handle that should that occur.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. Well, I have one more request. Supervisor Shafinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed that what you have here is a $327,000 grant for a period of 2 years. And this may be a bit premature, so I recognize that, but what is the thought process after the end of that 2-year period?
Thank you for saying that, because I didn't touch on that. This is just the first piece of the grant. So this was the, I don't know what word to use it because it's not short term for us because it's 2 years. But this was like the quick project. They said, you know, what quick project can you do that's going to make a difference for families in your community? And this is ours. We have the opportunity to write for and be part of another larger project, a larger grant. In this same demonstration project. So if we see success with this, it might be continuing this and it might be growing it as part of that grant as well. Also, if we see success with this and it reduces our out-of-home care budget, and we can reduce our out-of-home care budget and reinvest that money into a program like this because it was successful. So that's what the demonstration piece is all about, is to see what works.
Thank you.
And Supervisor Dickinson, one last question?
Yes, and this along similar lines. So with this cost, there's 8 staffers that were on your list in that table, just eight persons who were listed in your presentation. Is the grant paying for those people and the work that they're going to be doing in their resource, or is this just going to be considered part of what people do? Or, you know, is the grant covering it all?
So only the people here listed under social services are county employees. And as we're all working towards this is going to be part of our job. We're not getting additional reimbursement. So I guess you could consider that in kind for getting the $327,000. The other people who are listed in here are other agencies that are not, well, Laura Scuderi is a county employee. She's on the team. She's really a consultant with us as well, but the other people you can see are in private agencies.
And one last question, Supervisor Baker.
So what is going to be the ask for the board? What are we going to be asked to make a decision, and what would that decision be?
No, this was an education presentation to the board to understand what the program is that is being run by social services and is being funded by the state. With that, I want to thank
you.
Vicki and thank you for the great presentation, and thank you for all your work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And we will go on. Next, we have item 8C, and that's standing committee chairpersons or designees. And I've asked at the executive committee each of the standing committee chairpersons to give a brief report on the work that their committee has done in the last month. Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick update on the June 2nd, 2022 Infrastructure Committee meeting we had. We had discussion starting out with the 2050 Transportation Sustainability, got a problem with that word, planning study. This study was prepared by North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission under the supervision of the Highway Department. The study consists of 140 pages. The final report or draft came out in March of this year. So this committee has not had an opportunity to review this. Like I said, is 140 pages. Commissioner Jim Griesbach discussed this plan and made it very clear that this committee needs to start reviewing this plan because if we want to continue the same amount of or provide the same amount of resources to continue the maintenance on our roads, according to this study, we're gonna have some resource problems as far as offering those services. The committee is going to continue to discuss this study and look at some revenue options that may help address some of these shortfalls that this study showed in this as far as maintaining the highways in Marathon County. We then discussed the 2018-2022 strategic plan, which every standing committee did. There were 3 questions that were asked. I'm not going to go over them because of every standing committee did discuss that, but we are going to continue to have discussions on updating the 2018-2022 strategic plan as far as the infrastructure committee's objectives. The Highway Commissioner reviewed the 2023 CIP request with the committee, and the number 1 priority is Highway K, but the project to do this is about $5 million short to complete this project. We reviewed the County X right-of-way rolling request fund for $49,476. This is to reimburse an account that's set aside for the Highway Committee or Highway Commission to use to purchase properties when they come available. We had an update on the 28th corridor project. On May 26th, Administrator Leonard, Commissioner Griesbach, Kevin Lang from the Highway Department, and myself met with 2 individuals from the Village of Maine and 2 individuals from the Wausau Street Department. This project has been in the works for over 20 years. And the discussion with these individuals at the City Hall, the representatives from the Village of Maine decided that they were not going to pursue this project as far as the area in the Village of Maine. They did not want to move it forward. However, the City of Wausau still felt that this was a viable project and still want to continue looking at it. The Marathon County also made a decision or discussed not pursuing or moving forward with this project any further than it is. Jim Griesbach advised that if WASA decides to move forward with their portion of this 28th Avenue corridor, the county could donate some land parcels that they have bought over these 20 years to complete this project. And they do have a 30% plan that's already been developed by Marathon County. If the city of Wausau does not decide to move forward with this plan, then that property would be retained by Marathon County and could be sold. Now, just this committee or these group of people that met, they're not the decision makers. These issues have to be discussed by their boards or commissions before it would be approved, but that likely will be coming to the Marathon County Board. We discussed the 2022 culvert and bridge aid process. First of all, there is no county levy money involved in these culvert purchases. The purchases are paid for through a state aid grant, which is awarded to the municipalities. However, the Highway Department, Marathon Highway Department, is involved in making sure that these culverts are placed in the correct areas. The next meeting is July 7th, and does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Any questions for the Vice Chair on infrastructure? If not, we'll move on to the next committee. Any committee chairpersons wishes to give a report? Supervisor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee met on June 8th, and we have 300 governmental transfers that are up on the agenda later relative to the Health Department, Sheriff's Department, and Emergency Management. We spent time talking about the budget timeline for 2023, and while it's a long way away, it isn't. In July, we will be presenting background information on what some of the budget assumptions are to let you know how we're approaching the budget, as well as a budget 101 describing how the budget process works. And the budget includes two components: our spending on operational items each year, as well as our capital improvement plan. We'll roll that out to you, make some budget assumptions, give those directives to the administrator, who will then work with the department heads, and they'll bring a proposed budget back to the committee on October 3rd. And then the committee will be spending the next couple of weeks working on that. We'll be having a presentation to the county board in October, at the October 20th meeting, and then a hearing on November 3rd, and approving it on the 10th of November. We're hoping to provide additional updates throughout the process to make sure that you're understanding what those assumptions are. We spent some time talking about the strategic and comprehensive plans and what items could come up, and there were healthy discussions that will be ongoing. Child care was discussed, housing, and potential renewable energy. We then spent most of the meeting hearing presentations on requests for the American Rescue Plan Act from various entities, including the Village of Marathon City, the City of Mosinee, our facility staff, and the Sheriff's Department. We'll be having a meeting next Tuesday where we'll hear the presentations on the remaining requests, and then begin the process of making recommendations for this group to consider at their July meeting on how we will allocate a portion of our American Rescue Plan dollars. And for the newer members, we received $26.3 million from the federal government. We've received our second tranche, as it's called, or payment from the state. We have to commit those dollars by December 31st of 2024, and actually spend them by December 31st of 2026. So we have a process of receiving those, and we're in the process of evaluating those, and we'll be bringing those back to this board. Any questions?
Okay, I think we have Supervisor Shafinsky with a question. I know that those are chairs that are requesting to speak. So Supervisor Seifelt, Van Cray, and Langenhan are chairs of standing committees that will be presenting. So Supervisor Stravinsky, do you have a question for HR Finance Committee Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do, and this may be not exactly the right place to ask the question, but what we have seen is, in terms of the year thus far, is we've seen substantial inflation and substantial increases in fuel prices. That's got to have had an effect on the budgetary process that was, not able to predict that going forward for this year. Has the HR Finance Committee put together a plan and a process by which we're going to evaluate where we are, for example, with the Sheriff's Department, the Highway Department, the Solid Waste Department, in terms of their fuel budget for the year, and how we're going to address that versus, cutting back elsewhere? Thank you.
We have not to date. One of the limitations of the Kayenta financial system is our ability to track some of those year-to-date expenditures. And I liken it to, I was on the county board in the 1970s, and we had better financial reporting in the 1970s than we do under their current financial system. That's not a bad idea. We have not, generally speaking, when we start experiencing problems, it will require transfers of funds within those budgets and adjustments, but we have not had specific requests. I think that the departments are trying to live within their means to date. Should they need a transfer of funds, we would consider that, but I think that's one of the things we will be evaluating in establishing our budget assumptions going forth to next year.
I think another thing that would be noteworthy here is the administrator, when he built the budget, he set aside $750,000 in what is called a contingency fund for that specific reason. If there is pressures on any department, at some point they may come to the HR Finance Committee and to this full board with a request to utilize some of that contingency fund money. That requires a two-thirds majority vote of this board to transfer funds out of the contingency fund, which has no specific earmark for specific projects or costs. Supervisor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question on the ARPA items. They don't have a dollar amount. Is there a dollar amount posted somewhere for these items? Is it in the
It would be in the packet for the HR
Finance? Okay, thank you.
Finance Committee. Some of those have been withdrawn. Some are in the process of being modified. So we'll need to be somewhat fluid in terms of what those requests are. But ultimately, it will come to this board, and we will need a two-thirds vote in which to appropriate those funds.
Okay, seeing no additional requests to address or question the HR Finance Committee Chair, we'll move on to Chair Seifelt, Chair of the Extension Education Economic Development Committee. Supervisor Seifelt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an update on the committee. On June 6th, last couple of Thursdays ago, we toured the university with Ann Hurd Rep. Am I pronouncing that right? Close, huh? Okay. And we went through where they were doing some remodeling, and it's coming quite well. And what they want to do, as far as raising some floors and lowering some, and making more convention speaking rooms or something like that, halls. I'm getting confused here with that. But then we toured the dorms, went over and looked at the dorms, and that building is it's not really that run down, but the ceilings are so low that that I can see why we cannot use that, or anybody that would want to come in and remodel that, that building, because the ceilings are actually made out of cement. I think that thing is, if a tornado came through, I think that's the place to go. But, and on the other hand, on childcare, I was going to have Lance have us go with the child care grant that we had last month. I don't know if Chris knows anything about it more than what I do. From what I know is that it was a grant where 19 entities came, and it was about 5,000 apiece. If I'm not close, Chris, I'll give it to you.
No, you're close, and everything for that grant is still in the preliminary stages. So the funding's been awarded. Those 19 entities across the community are having setting up meetings to start discussing with all their own partners and that group how to then move forward and what are the plans that can kind of best approach the questions associated with the dilemma, and then start coming up with options that can work here, and then also hopefully, you know, if there's things that work here that can translate to other places, or we can learn from what others who have also won the grant are doing, that you start, you know, getting some outcomes that find resolution for the child care dilemma, which is, you know, across the board for anybody, almost anywhere these days.
Okay, thank you. And I'm hoping that our committee, our next assignment is going to be working on low-income housing. I talked to Lance about it. We'll try to get the ball rolling on that, see what we can help out with. Other than that, if anybody has any questions.
Okay, any questions for Supervisor Seifelt, Chair of the Extension Education Economic Development Committee? Next, we'll have Supervisor Van Cray, the Health and Human Services Committee Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be brief. We didn't have any actionable items at our June 1st meeting. We, like everybody else, went over the 2018-2022 strategic plan, and I think we had a really great conversation about what some additions and changes can be for this extension of it. We had a presentation from Vicki Tilka and Krista Jensen from Social Services. They talked about the foster system in Marathon County. And if you're interested in the foster system, I highly recommend going back and watching that meeting, because they shared a lot of great information that was really eye-opening to most of us. And then we had an introduction, kind of a brief overview of North Central Healthcare from that interim director, Mort McBain. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for the Health and Human Services Committee Chair? Okay, we'll move on to the ERC, Environmental Resources Committee Chair, Supervisor Longenhan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If anybody is interested in the actions or any of the work that the ERC did this month, I encourage you to read pages 47 to 51 of your packets that were prepared for this evening. I will just highlight one change for the Linebach rezone that is mentioned in the meeting minutes on page 49. There was no action taken in my review of that particular agenda item. I determined that the meeting notice was not accurate, so the committee took no action for that particular agenda item. The other thing I would highlight is that for the Town of Frankfort rezone that will be in front of the group for Tuesday, the Town of Frankfort did submit their resolution to approve that rezone. Our department received it this morning. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any questions for Chair Longenhan? Okay, we will move on. Is there any other supervisors or chairs requesting to give a report to the board? Okay, we will move on to review and discussion of Tuesday agenda items. And first item is items 9A, and that's appointments. I have an appointment to the Park Commission. Any questions on that appointment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 9A2, and that is the appointment to the Board of Adjustment. Any questions on the appointment to the Board of Adjustment? Okay, next we have on the agenda is the filling of the vacancy for County Supervisory District 34. This is scheduled for action tonight. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Langenhahn. Is there a second? Excuse me, I'm going to utilize the program that we have. So the motion was by Vice Chair McEwen and seconded by Supervisor Crivelli. Is there any discussion? Again, what I would say is we followed the process that is outlined in our board rules that has been adopted by this committee. We had submitted a advertisement requesting individuals submit their letters of interest. We had 4 candidates submit their letters of interest. The committee then met last week, Thursday and Friday, and interviewed the 4 candidates, and we had 4 great candidates. And the committee had also had several individuals from the public attend those views and those interviews. And you have before you the candidate that the committee has felt most qualified moving forward to this board for its consideration. And so you have before you Supervisor or potential Supervisor Crystal Bushman, and she is the one candidate that the committee interviewed and moved forward. And so any discussion? We have Supervisor Langenhahn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would like to request that for future appointments, and I hope we don't have to make them, often. Can we please make those appointments after the public comment on the agenda? Because at any point, the individual could have had questions for the staff members during the meeting. So I'm, of course, going to support this appointment, but for the future process, I would request that you follow that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. The motion is to approve Crystal Bushman to fill the unexpired term for Supervisory District 24, the term expiring in April of 2024. And we will use a voice vote. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. And the motion is carried and is unanimous, and I would ask the clerk to now administer the oath to Ms. Crystal Bushman. Raise your right hand and then repeat after me. I, Crystal Bushman,
I, Crystal Bushman,
having been appointed to the office of County Board Supervisor District 24,
having been appointed to the County Board Supervisor District 24,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of said office to the best of my ability.
of said office to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Supervisor Bushman. So now we will move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is ordinances under 9B1. Ordinance, Town of Frankfurt rezone, ordinance 14-22. Is there any discussion? Any discussion on the Town of Frankfurt rezone, ordinance 14-22? If not, we'll move on to item 9B2, Town of McMillan rezone, ordinance 15-22. Any questions? Okay, we will move on to resolutions from the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee. Item 9C, 1A, approve the 2022 budget transfers for Marathon County Department of Appropriations, Resolution 42-22. Any questions? Supervisor Sandalski.
Yeah, my question pertains to this resolution. It pertains to the donations from the private organization for the position on the health department, the 72,974. Is this like private donor? Are they committing to? Is this a 1 year, or is this like a continuous? Are they committing to several years for this position? So I ask is like after the year's up, are they going to continue, or is the county going to have to pick up the tab for their salary? Or
Supervisor Robinson's going to address the question.
The position is tied directly into the funding. If the funding goes away, the position goes away. So this is a third phase of trying to extend behavioral health services into the schools throughout the county, and it's a much-needed program.
Thank you.
Supervisor Shafinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Building on the initial question, the funding was by a private party, but the private party is not mentioned. Why is that? And who is the private party?
Supervisor Robinson?
The private party is because it's not a governmental entity. I believe this is through the Blues. I'll check on that and get direct back to you. I would be speculating, but it was not in the request, but I know that in the past we received grants from that. We'll have that information on Tuesday.
Supervisor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following up with the same position. So this is the third phase of a multi-year program. How many phases are there? How many years are there in this program designed to help mental health in the schools of students?
Again, we'll get you that information. I believe that there are, I wish Lance were here, but this is something that has been ongoing, started with the Western Marathon County Coalition, but we'll get you that information and provide you with an update on Tuesday. I'm looking for the Board of Health, but Michelle's not here, but this is an ongoing grant that we've had working with that coalition and others to try to expand that, but we'll have that information.
So we'll provide that, either provide that information in an email out to the full board, or we'll have the information on Tuesday during the voters' meeting. Any other questions on Resolution 42-22? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item number 10, announcements and/or requests.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I
Oops.
did have just one other comment, one
All right.
other statement on that one.
Supervisor Dickinson.
Thank you, I appreciate that. The only thought I would say in this is I am a school board member. I've been a school board member for going on 12 years. And there's been a lot of discussion in the schools about mental health. However, I think there's different mentalities about how to address that. My concern is that in this situation and in the push, like on the state level, is these not a real defined focus about how to address it. And what you're getting is you're getting private organizations throwing some money in. You're getting county health departments kind of getting involved, trying to do something. And in my opinion, as the situation has increased over the past couple of years because of other decisions that have been made by school districts, counties, states, and federal governments, without having a clearly defined path about how to address these things, I'm having a hard time putting money into it. So in this particular transfer, I don't see myself supporting this on Tuesday. And so my question would be to the chair, this is something that can be pulled out. We can make an amendment to this budget transfer to pull out this line item. Is that correct?
Yes, we can have that separately voted on.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor Robinson?
Well, I'd just like to point out, this is not spending any county money. This is a grant that we're receiving from a third party to fund these services. So we'll provide that so that we are providing it. But a lot of the work, a lot of the background on these services came out of the Western Marathon County Coalition, of which I believe Stratford is a member, which identified behavioral health as a critical issue. I know that in the past, the Board of Health has tracked that, and they've been trying to integrate or to have additional services available to students in the schools, and unfortunately, the funding is inadequate, and we were serving approximately 5% of the needs of the kids. So there's a need to expand those services and look at new directions, and I think this is an effort to try to do that.
If I could just.
Supervisor Dickinson.
Thank you. This is the last thing I would have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that is, I'm well aware of the Western Marathon County Coalition, which is involved with the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is done every 2 years in the state. And I understand there are other items that are on those lists that do not get addressed. Actually, the number one issue that's identified in the survey, Mr. Chair, is alcoholism and the use of alcohol by students. So if we want to look at what we could be addressing and how money can be used by private organizations, we very rarely see that being directed towards our schools. In that regard, again, whether county money is directly being used, county resources will be used, are being used, and it's the amount of time that we spend and resources we spend, even in a meeting like this discussing, but in the county health department and the other organizations. So thank you.
We have Supervisor Baker next.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs. Would it be possible to have a 5 to 10 minute educational session on Tuesday before we vote so that we have a better idea of what it is that this program entails?
We will, and we'll also have answers to all the questions that have been raised today. Supervisor
Thank you.
Hardinger.
That was my request as well, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on that agenda item? Okay. Supervisor Shafinsky.
Question, if I read the packet correctly, one of the items included in that transfer was a request from the Sheriff's Department for an additional training exercise or training educational process. I'm wondering if that can be split out relative to the issue with the rest of the Sheriff's Department budget that I addressed earlier. Maybe we don't need to be spending that money on that training exercise if we need to spend that money on our ability to respond.
I believe, and we'll look into that, but I believe this is a grant, and this is money that is carryover for a grant that was approved prior, and this is a carryover of those unspent funds that are utilized, and they are required. And they have been agreed to by the terms of the grant. So I don't know that we have the ability to change that grant that has already been agreed to. With that being said, any other questions? Okay, we will move on to announcements and/or requests. An announcement to the full board is that on Tuesday, the 21st at 6:30, the full board will have a board picture. So we did not have a board picture last year that will be shared on the internet. So, but be prepared to arrive early. We are going to have a photographer here to take a picture of the full board to present on the website. Also, just to let everyone know, the administrator sends his apologies. He was called away on a family emergency and will be here on Tuesday. With that, any other announcements and/or requests? Supervisor Sandalski.
Yeah, I got a request for the board. I'm not sure if anybody knows about Pastor Yang's Gospel TLC ministry. I've learned about it within the last year or so, and I would like to ask if he could come and give a presentation. It's a 6-month rehabilitation, drug and alcohol rehabilitation ministry that's it's privately funded, and he just built a new facility here in Wausau and here in Marathon County, and I believe it would be definitely a benefit to bring his ministry here to light on the county board. Is there a chance I could possibly invite him to come and speak?
I'll take that under advisement. It may have to go by our board rules. We have spelled out in our board rules how items can be brought to the board for education. And so it would have to be vetted and gone through a committee. So I will take that request and apply the board procedures to that request. Any other announcements and/or requests? Okay, we are down to the last item on the agenda, and that is item 11. What is your pleasure? You want to use the voting software, please? I'm trying to get everyone used to using voting software. Is there a motion? Now you have a motion by Vice Chair McEwen and a second by Supervisor Dickinson to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.